dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
and you
and you and you.
Duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Quantum Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 21, titled Nuclear Family. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam must deal with a panic associated with the Cuban Missile crisis as a Florida fallout shelter salesman. The episode was written by Paul Brown. He was last responsible for Private Dancer. The episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr., last responsible for Piano Man. The episode takes place on October 26, 1962, and originally aired on May 15, 1991. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Quantum Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, shout-outs this week. A couple of sad ones, I'll get to those. Ashley Wright, he was also not a fan of wrestling, so that hampered his enjoyment of this episode. The last episode, Heart of a Champion. Alpha also didn't like the Terry Funk jealousy subplot in that episode. And, you know, he's responding to my point. He's agreeing with me. But I will say, devil's advocate, if you were a Terry Funk fan, that probably helped your enjoyment of the episode. Maybe a little bit. Liam is new to the channel.
Oh, hi, Liam.
Yes, Liam actually did not remember this episode at all. So he had to go back and rewatch the episode.
That's funny.
Because he didn't remember the wrestling episode at all. And he started watching some of our other videos as well, including the Deborah Pratt interview.
Yay!
And, hey, guess what? We are now on Internet Movie Database. And that would be thanks to my co-host, Stacie. She spent an absurd amount of time working on those Internet Movie Database references. And right now we are sitting at 93 episodes. This episode and the one we're doing after about Extended Family would be 94 and 95. And this actually will air first, so this will be episode 94, which means we're pretty close to 100 episodes of us together.
Yeah.
So, sad news. Tracy Torme, a writer on Star Trek Next Generation and the creator of Sliders, he unfortunately passed away. It was January 4th that he passed away. I was gonna say that last week, but this episode got postponed basically because of snow. So, and it's funny because we will eventually talk about Sliders. Maybe do a couple episodes, couple seasons maybe. And yeah, looking through the Internet Movie Database page, I think it's rather sad that there's probably more bad episodes of that series than there are good ones. Because, that series went straight up off the rails. We've talked about that in the past.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Fox was massively interfering with that series. To the point where eventually Tracy Torme stepped down in season 3.
And that's the reason a lot of the original cast members left, too, is they didn't like the direction the show was going.
And in each of those cast departures, they handled that miserably.
It got worse and worse and worse.
Right. Starting with Artaud, played by John Rhys Davies. But yeah. Speaking of Sliders, we referenced Angela Patton last week, and we mentioned that she appeared in an episode of Sliders. And I was curious, so I looked into it. The episode that she appeared in was the Season 4, Episode 20, The Chasm. I mistakenly thought you were talking about a Season 3 episode.
I probably did mix up the episodes.
Yeah. Well, from what you were describing, it sounded like you were talking about a Season 3 episode. Yeah. But it actually turned out to be a Season 4
I probably, blended the episodes together in my head.
Right. I mean, they're very similar in content. So, yep, I was curious to look into that. Also, one last sad shout out. I probably should have put these in the same order but whatever. For Gary Graham, he passed away a couple days ago. Gary Graham was known for Enterprise. He was a Vulcan on that series. He appeared in a number of episodes. Alienation and a Star Trek Voyager episode in season 2 called Cold Fire. All right, Stacie, your thoughts. Oh, actually, one more thing.
One more piece of news.
Yes.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
So the current series, the continuation of Quantum Leap, we've been waiting, and finally the second half of season 2 is starting next week. January 30th is episode 9 that we've been so patiently waiting for, and it's going to be on for just 4 short weeks, which is sad.
It is.
5 episodes over the next 4 weeks, so lots of content will be happening in the Quantum Leap world.
Yes, indeed. All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
All right, so I like this episode, and probably when I think about it, the reason I like it is I like the setting of this, right? We're right in my happy place, late 50s, early 60s, dealing with that mid-century environment. That's where I like to be. So I always enjoyed this episode. I also, it's got little kids in it. I always tended to think more fondly of the episodes with kids, probably because I was a little kid when I was watching it, know. This movie, though, or this episode, always reminds me of the movie Blast from the Past.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that movie
at
all?
I am. That's a Brendan Fraser movie.
Yeah, it's Alicia Silverstone and Brendan Fraser, also starring Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek as his parents. And it just reminds me of that because that whole movie was about a fallout shelter.
Right. Yep.
And going into this, I was like, oh, does it even have like the same... Like, I was thinking, does it even have the same, like, television clips on it? And it doesn't. In that movie, we get a Kennedy speech that aired on October 22nd. But in this episode, the one that we get of Kennedy actually is out of place of the episode. It was one that was aired on September 13th. But same context. We're dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're dealing with a fallout shelter. So it's the exact same setting, basically.
There are 2 movies that come to mind that this episode brings up to mind because they're also about the Cuban Missile Crisis, or at least set during that time period. One is 13 Days, which focuses on the political side of that. With Robert Greenwood and Kevin Costner. He's also in that movie. And then there's a movie, a Matinee, about this, basically this film guy that he's like all about putting movies in theaters that I remember pretty fondly, also set during the time period. And yeah, this is a really good episode. It's probably in Future Boy ranking. Like, it's not quite as good as the premieres and finales that we always talk about, but it's definitely up there as a quality episode goes. The season 3 concludes with an excellent 1-2 punch, this episode, and then shock theater after this.
Right.
And yeah, there's a lot of the vermestitude of this episode. It puts you in this time and space. Like, it puts you in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis and shows effectively, I would say, how some of this episode's events, like particularly towards the end, would even happen in this situation. Like, it's really kind of stark how, basically, it will be really easy for us to just completely fall apart and turn into animals. It would not take really that much.
Yeah.
And this episode demonstrates that rather depressingly. And you have some things to say. You're pointing at your notes.
Oh, no, I was just holding my place.
Okay. All right. So do we have anything else to say before going into this episode?
No. Let's just hit it as we hit it.
All right. Sam leaps into the middle of chaos. There's sounds of sirens and yelling. They're wearing gas masks. Someone's saying it's World War III. Sam is really confused, as anybody would be. And he's wearing a gas mask, and then we cut to the credits.
Yeah, and the other man in the room yells to him, "Duck and cover!"
Which, by the way, you'll note the duck and cover at our intro. That's the reason for that. So after the credits, the sirens end. It was just a test, says the radio. A little girl calls for Sam, saying no one is going to hurt him. And Sam thinks she's talking to him, but it turns out to be the dog.
Yeah, the dog's name's Sam, which is a cute twist, I think.
So in the scene is the father, who's Father Mac, not the Father Mac from an earlier episode of the season, but Mac, the father. He's played by Timothy Carhart. He was in an episode of The X-Files, a season 3 episode titled "Too Shy." And he was the villain in that episode. And when I actually noticed that, I was like, holy crap, I did not realize that was him. That episode, by the way, is the most 90s episode of television ever. It deals with basically how fat women are lonely and go into chat rooms to try to find love. And yeah, it's It's not an episode I remember too fondly, that's for sure. But he was also in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation, playing a person who gives Data crap when he's given command in Redemption Part 2. And he was in a movie called A Hunt for Red October. The original Ghostbusters. He was a violinist, a friend of Dana, that Bankman blew off rudely. He was not in the movie for very long. And, fun fact, he also co-starred with Dean Stockwell in Air Force One. That's another Harrison Ford movie. All told, for him, he has 80 credits. Meanwhile, the kids in the scene are played by... Stevie is played by Robert Gorman. He has 32 acting credits, including an episode of Full House and Boy Meets World. And then there's Kimberly. She's played by Candace Hutchinson. That's my best guess.
I have Candy Hudson.
Hudson?
I mean, maybe one of us probably typed out it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go with you and assume that you're correct. She was actually in the Land of Time movies, at least 4 of them.
Oh, yeah, she did voice work.
Yep, and she was also regular on Evening Shade. According to Internet Movie Database, both of these kids were born in 1980. She was May 5th, which means that this was actually 5 days after her birthday, making both of these kids 11 years old. I don't know that I buy that.
At time of airing, right?
Yeah.
So it was probably filmed
a little bit
in the prior year,
right?
But
I mean, I can buy 11 years old for Stevie. I'm not totally convinced of that for Kimberly's character.
I mean, she was supposed to be younger than him by a year or two, I would imagine.
Yeah,
in the story. So.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe she is 11 years old and she just looks really small and is really good at acting significantly younger. But
yeah.
So maybe that's accurate. I don't know. And finally, the mom, Kate, is played by Kim Flowers. She has 14 acting credits, including Alien Resurrection and Clear and Present Danger, yet another Harrison Ford movie. So yeah, that's our cast for this episode, though we're not quite done with that.
Yeah, we'll meet a couple more. One significant.
So they get off their gear. Sam suggests they go for some air. Max says that's exactly what they're going to do. Sam sees a mirror. The image is played by Patrick M. Bruno, and this is his one and only credit. And I'm surprised he even got credited at all because he doesn't speak.
Yeah, they in this original series, most of the time our mirror images got credits.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have been something they worked out.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm sure things were a little different back then with the rules too. You
right.
know, whatever contracts meant back then, I'm sure is a little different than the current way they read. But yeah, we don't get that in the current series.
No.
We're not getting the names of who our mirror images are unless they speak.
Right.
Because of, credits.
Right. So they all end up climbing out of the shelter.
And you know what I caught during this?
What's that?
The dog emerging from the ladder.
Yeah.
Followed directly by the mom. Now, I know that dog did not climb that ladder. Dogs cannot climb ladders.
You sure about that?
I'm very sure of that. Dogs cannot climb ladders, straight up ladders. And
I mean, you have one, so I'll take your word for it.
I have a dog, yes. I don't have a ladder.
No.
Straight up, ladder like this. Although, wouldn't it be awesome to have a fallout shelter in your backyard?
It absolutely would.
That would be so fun, especially as a kid, just to use that to play in.
You should talk to your husband about buying one.
I don't think they build fallout shelters anymore.
No? Why not? I mean, there's plenty of nuclear weapons out there. We could be blown up at any time.
That's true. Maybe we should start a trend. Let's start rebuilding fallout shelters.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. But yeah, the dog's not going to climb the ladder. And the fact that it was the mom that came right after him means there's these 2 capable men there. And they're making this woman carry that 50-pound dog up a ladder.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
It should have definitely been one of the men coming right after the dog.
I mean, in Sam's defense, he's probably in a little bit of shock and he's really confused having just leaped in. Mac, on the other hand, has no such excuse. All right, so Mac's wife is giving Mac crap for scaring the crap out of the kids, but he thinks it's necessary that they need to know the truth and they might need to be in there for a couple weeks to survive the fallout. Sam's alarmed and says, "Fallout?" And Mac tells him not to worry. He will be protected by the deluxe shelter. Now, I'm not sure why Mac he feels the need to sell the shelter to
his brother.
Yeah, because he's heard this 1,000 times, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, Sam.
That's the thing is this is what he does. He's a fallout shelter salesman.
Right.
He builds the shelters, and that's his whole thing, especially right now, right? This is the height of it. Like, hey, it's my moment. And who knows how long he's been doing this. He's at one point said, he's been trying to sell the neighbor for 3 years. So he's been in this business a while.
Right.
And he'll very soon, even without the context of this episode, that business is going away, you know?
Yep.
So this is it. He has to be on sell mode 24/7.
Either way, either something happens or something doesn't happen. Either way, his business is done after this.
Right.
Mac tells him that the one thing he needs to remember when selling the shelters is that they are selling the best. Sam seems confused, and Mac doesn't call him on it. Mac sees his neighbor, who they call Bert the Turtle, played by Kurt Fuller, a.k.a. my Season 4 trivia question.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember that I brought that up.
I do remember because I just re-listened to that like a day or two ago for IMDb.
Yeah. So while Timothy Carhart was in the first Ghostbusters movie, Kurt Fuller was in the second one. He's got an impressive 209 act credits. He's still acting. He was in 33 episodes of Psych and was in the movie that came after that, set in the same universe. He was also in A House, 2 episodes of the Night Court revival, fairly recently, and most recently in the show Evil, which, by the way, also has Michael Emerson in it, who played Ben Linus from Lost.
Okay.
Which is now significant to me because I have finally watched that series.
Finally watched it.
Yes. So Mac takes Sam to talk to Bert. And, initially it didn't occur to me, by the way, why they were calling Bert the Turtle.
Right.
Like, are they making fun of his appearance? And all those years ago, it didn't click in my mind why they did that.
Yeah.
And it only clicked in my mind on this rewatch why they did that.
Well, they even said at some point, it might have been here, that, the kids gave him that nickname, Bert the Turtle, of course, because they are constantly watching Duck and Cover.
Right.
Which, the main character in that is a turtle named Bert the Turtle. So their neighbor's name is Bert. They call him Bert the Turtle.
So Sam finally catches on to the fact that he's in the middle of the Cuban Missile crisis. Mac takes the opportunity to sell Bert on a bomb shelter, which apparently he's been trying to do forever now. Mac wants Sam to take the lead, but Sam, of course, tries to get out of it, and his host had also never done it at this point.
Right. He had apparently just came. He's home from college, trying to earn some money to pay for the rest of his schooling. So he must have just arrived, which is convenient that this is fresh for him. So it makes sense that Sam doesn't know what he's doing, right?
So Sam gives him a tour. He's reading the brochure, and he's doing it badly. It has 2 plush bedrooms, a chemical toilet, a 3-way radio, a Geiger counter, and his own lead-laced outfit. And, the more they try, Mac is selling me on this. I actually want to live in the shelter. It sounds really cool.
You want to live in it, like, full time?
Right. I mean, maybe not live in it full time, but...
you want to experience it, have it.
Yep. I mean, I don't want the rest of it with the nuclear fallout.
Well, if we had a fallout shelter in our backyard, you could live in it, I suppose.
Yeah. How much would you charge me for that exactly, do you think? Anyway.
Well, are we getting it for these prices?
I don't know. In today's money, that would actually be pretty cheap. Probably.
We learn in this scene that the shelter normally sells for $3,000. But Mac offers Bert a VIP 20% off discount since he's his neighbor, making the cost $2,400.
Ooh.
So that's affordable. I don't think we could dig the hole for that price today.
Probably not. Mac steals Sam's thunder and finishes off the pitch with "Survive in style." He gives Bert the hard sell, but Bert says he needs to think about it and that he needs to put his milk away, and then runs off. And that's a very convenient excuse.
I mean, it's true, though. He was carrying in groceries. And they're in Florida, so it's probably pretty hot.
Yeah, you don't want to...
We're in, what is it? Oh, it's October, so not the peak of heat, but still it's Florida.
Still, you don't want to keep your milk out. Max says he's been trying to sell him for 2 years, and that Sam better bone up on the brochure because this could be going on for weeks. Al appears at the 9-minute and 41-second mark, and he's sunk into the floor. He corrects that mistake. Sam's irritated, saying he's a nuclear bomb shelter salesman. Al tells him that nope, he's a college student selling these things to help pay for school. Sam points out that there was no nuclear war, and Al says people didn't know that at the time. Everyone thought that this was the end of the world. Sam was 8 at the time, and he mentions that his mom was canning food like crazy, but it didn't seem so scary to him at the time. And I was like, oh, it didn't seem so scary, huh? Maybe you'd feel a little bit differently if you were flying reconnaissance over Cuba like I was back in the day. And Alice points out the fact that, yeah, they came very close to World War III.
Yeah. And so his host is a junior at Oklahoma State. He lost his basketball scholarship after hurting his knee, and that's why he now needs to come up with some money.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should feel pretty familiar to Sam, right? He was a
Yes.
basketball player, and so he there should be, you know, some connectivity here,
Mm-hmm.
where he feels comfortable in this host, and
But, you know, he may be comfortable in the host, but he's definitely not comfortable in the situation.
right,
He's having trouble-
a hard
yeah.
time connecting to
Mhm.
the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that the kid really wasn't all that concerned about it either. You know, he came home to earn money. He's not here because he thinks we're about to get bombed.
Right. I mean,
He's just trying to get back to school.
right. It's kind of like the difference between being, like, kind of young in your 20s. You kind of think of yourself as invisible, whereas the adults are they feel less safe. And the younger kids feel even less safe than that.
Yeah.
Sam says that Kennedy didn't end up attacking Cuba, and Khrushchev ended up dismantling the missiles. Al says yes, but tomorrow night, Bert is going to be shot by Mac, and he's going to get 20 years, and the family is going to lose everything, including Mac.
Yeah, and we have a 99% chance, according to Ziggy, that Sam is here to keep Bert from getting shot and killed.
Not 100% there?
99.
Wow.
Remember, we didn't do 100%
Yes.
in the original series.
Yep.
That's some new series stuff, 100% business. Because, you know, nothing's for certain when you're dealing with time travel.
Absolutely.
So the date that we're at right now is October 26, 1962, right in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I bring up the date because we're aligning with real-world events here, right? We're going to see throughout this episode news broadcasts, actual footage that was happening during this time. And October 26th was a Friday. I looked that up. So we're on Friday, October 26th. Bert's supposed to die tomorrow on Saturday the 27th,
Ooh.
according to what Al's telling us here.
Okay, you couldn't wait till the weekend was over? All right, so Sam says that doesn't make any sense. And Al sets the scene saying that people would shoot their neighbors to protect their family. Sam says that's insane. And Al points out, so is what's going to happen tomorrow night, unless Sam can stop Mac. And Sam seems less confident that he can do that. Meanwhile, the kids are on the lawn. They see some planes. Stevie says something about they'll end up stopping the Ruskies. Kimberly says that if they don't, they'll just duck and cover because they think that's going to protect them.
Yeah, and she wants to know. She's like, why do the Russians want to kill us?
Right.
She's very confused. She's very, like, she wants to understand what's happening. They're scared.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie's trying to be brave and be like, I'm the protector, but Kimberly's scared. And, you know, this fits very well thematically with last week's episode.
It does.
Where, you know, Sam and his host brother were pretending to be, you know, the Russian
Right. Yep.
characters. They're the bad guys.
Right.
And that's where we are. This is a few years later, but that's the environment we're in,
Mhm.
right? And this is really where it comes to a head with the Cuban Missile Crisis is, the Russians are the bad guys and they're gonna, you know, bomb us and end the world.
So Sam happens upon them, and Kimberly asks why the Russians want to kill them. And Sam tries to tell them that they aren't evil. Matt comes in on this conversation and gets really irritated with Sam really quick. And is basically like, hey, why are you upsetting my kids? And Sam says, well, I'm just trying to comfort him. And Mac is basically like, well, you're doing a great job. Now, for all intents and purposes, Mac is kind of an antagonist in this episode. But really, from his perspective and with the information that he has, he's right in all of his actions.
Right.
He doesn't have...
Although, I mean, you still shouldn't want to scare your kids. They're
Right.
young.
Right.
Even if you think the world's about to end, you should be trying to calm your children.
Yeah.
And not actively saying them we're about to die.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, he's not a bad guy. He's trying to protect his family. That's all he's trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, he is kind of a slimy salesman, but at the same time, you know, he thinks genuinely that the world is going to end.
Right.
So he thinks that these shelters are absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's a car salesman trying to sell bad cars or something along those lines. But
it's kind of a weird scenario because if he really does think the world's going to end, what good is getting money from selling shelters?
yeah, fair enough. You just be handing those suckers out for free, I guess. All right, so.
And we also learned that, where they're at, which is Homestead, Florida, they're only 200 miles from Cuba.
Right, and they mention that number quite a few times.
Yeah, we're only 200 miles from the missile depot. And actually, I feel like that would mean they'd be less likely to be targeted because they're so close.
I mean, I don't know. They're closer, so...
Wouldn't that at least be one of the last places they'd target? Because it might blow them up as well. So they'd probably start further away, right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. The best way to avoid a nuclear war is to not get into one in the first place. Yeah. So I don't think it really matters how close you are. But Sam... Oh, yeah, okay. So late at night, they're watching Mr. Ed.
They're watching Mr. Ed.
Hey.
They're watching the pilot episode of Mr. Ed.
By the way, did you know that the horse that played Mr. Ed was actually Mr. Ed? Mr. Ed played himself in that series.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And, sorry. So, also, another fun little fact, because I just happened to look into it because I was watching this episode. The Mr. Ed horse lived for 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long horses generally live.
I feel like that's probably a
general horse lifespan. Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's probably making a loud noise when you do that.
Right, probably.
But interesting tidbit is they're watching the pilot episode of the series, which actually aired January 5th, 1961.
Okay, so it aired...
So it had aired a year and 3/4 before this. And I don't think they were doing reruns back then.
No, I was just going to say that. Yeah, no, I don't think they were actually doing reruns at that point.
So they probably included this footage just because they had the rights to use this particular episode. But it's not accurate that this should be what they're watching right
now. So, yeah, they are soon interrupted by breaking news about the ongoing crisis. And it's not good news. Things are getting worse. Mac thinks this is a good time to put everyone to bed. Kimberly is afraid, but he says he'll tuck her in a moment. And Sam takes the moment to talk to Mac about the gun in the shelter. Sam thinks it's dangerous, even if it's locked up. Mac says they need it to protect against looters and Ruskies in case everything goes, to crap. And Sam asks, well, what about the neighbors? Like, are we using it to protect us against neighbors as well? And Mac seems to think that, if someone tries to break into the shelter, that he will absolutely need to use that gun against the neighbors.
Mm-hmm. And he specifically tells us it's locked up. He has the only key.
Mm-hmm. Sam says that a lot of people don't believe that they would survive a nuclear war. And Mac asks, is that what the liberals at college are saying? And Sam says that he got a bit of an education there, suggesting that none of them would survive because it would create something called a nuclear winter.
Right, which is what happens in the new series.
Right.
In 2051, so they don't got to worry about it quite yet.
Nope. Mac disagrees that none of them would survive. Some of them would, and he brings up the Dust Bowl that he lived through.
Right, in 1935.
And they survived that, and they'll survive this. This is a really great scene, by the way. Mm-hmm. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Timothy Carhart is really good in this episode as Mac. So Sam is sleeping on the couch. He's woken up by Stevie, who thought he heard something outside.
Yeah, he opens up the sliding glass door.
And he can't help but wonder how far 200 miles is. Sam reassures him that there will be no war, and asks him if he's ever been scared before. Stevie says that when his mom died,
she did not die.
No, when she was in the hospital, he thought that she might die. And Sam says that to look back at that time and say, you'll find that you spent a lot of time worrying about something that never came to pass, and that the same situation will happen here. And he says if you were a time traveler looking back at the time, you would see that there was nothing to be scared about. But Stevie asks, does that mean being afraid is stupid? And Sam says, no, but sometimes it doesn't do you any good. And Stevie is reassured by this, and this is another great scene.
It is a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
He does all the things he was trying to do with him and Kimberly, except he's not interrupted by Mac this time.
Right.
And he's able to calm the boy down and talk about time travel and all that great stuff. And we get a shot of the full moon in the sky, which is a beautiful scenery. But of course, I had to go look this up.
No full moon?
There's definitely not a full moon. And this is an inconsistency I found all on my own. It's not listed in Matt Dale's book, it's not listed on Al's Place. I found this one. Haven't seen anybody mention this before, but I looked up October 26, 1962. We should have had a waning crescent moon, which means barely any moon should be visible at all. The exact opposite of a full moon.
Well, I gotta say, Stacie, I'm looking forward to reading your book on this series. All right, so the next morning, there's another bulletin. More bad news. Katie ends up shooing them out of the house to go play.
Okay, so to back up just a little bit, before the bulletin came on, they were actually watching a Woody Woodpecker short.
Okay. Are you gonna tell me that this did not air during this time period?
I am going to tell you that, but I'm also going to tell you why they picked it, and it was a great choice for them to pick, even though it doesn't actually fit within history. So it was a Woody Woodpecker short called Prehistoric Super Salesman.
Okay.
Okay, and it didn't actually come out until 7 years after where we're at right now. It came out on September 1st, 1969. But the visual of what's on the screen, and it's just a very quick little blip we get to see of it. It's a shot of a time tunnel.
Okay.
So this is referencing time travel, and it also looks an awful lot like the bomb shelter entrance.
All right.
So it very thematically fits with what they're doing here. So I get why they used it. But yeah, it's 7 years too early.
Okay.
So yeah, then it's interrupted by a special bulletin, and the bulletin was that the Pentagon revealed the identity of the U-2 pilot that was shot down yesterday, is what they said in the announcement.
Yep.
And that would be Major Rudolph Anderson Jr., which is the actual person that, like, this is all real history. This is what actually happened. Except he was shot down on the 27th, which that should be today, not yesterday. So
gotcha.
They did have their day off by including this.
I think we can forgive him for that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that they use all original footage. I love when they do stuff like that and really pull in the real history. And this really is what happened. He was shot down during those reconnaissance flights that Al was talking about. Al was right in the middle of this, you know, according to his history. So that's where we really have this great intersection between what actually happened and, you know, our show's made up history.
Okay.
So yeah, then go ahead.
Okay. All right. The kid's piano teacher comes in. She's Mrs. Klingman. She wants to buy a shelter. Max says he has to go, but Eddie can help. The actress is played by Delia Salvi. That's my best pronunciation.
I agree with that.
She has 20 acting credits, including the 1953 film From Here to Eternity. This was her last acting credit, this episode. And she died on May 1st, 2015, at the age of 87. All right, so Sam gives her a tour. She tells him that he needs to work on his pitch. She gets upset when Sam tries to reassure her, saying the Russians are not going to attack. And it turns out that she's a Holocaust survivor. Sam talks her out of buying the shelter, and she laughs, telling him that he is, in fact, not a very good salesman.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, she said, we don't really have a lot of money. They can't afford a 2-bedroom shelter. She's like, don't you have a smaller version?
Right, yeah.
It's just me and my husband. We don't need this much space. And all they have to survive on is his pension and whatever she makes teaching piano. And it was when he saw the tattoo. And that tattoo apparently indicates that she was imprisoned in Dachau based on what numbers were on her tattoo. And that's significant to me because that's actually where my great-grandfather was imprisoned, was in Dachau.
Oh, okay. And I don't know about any of my history. I know that my family came from Russia, and I know this because, you know, I did genealogy with you. Initially came from Russia to avoid probably religious persecution. They also happened to be of the Jewish faith as well. Yeah,
my great-grandfather was not Jewish. He was German, and he was imprisoned in Dachau as a political prisoner. The family story goes that it was because he refused to salute Hitler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he survived. One of not many who did.
Right.
And thank goodness he did, because he didn't meet my great-grandmother until after that experience.
Right. So if he didn't, we would not be having this conversation.
My whole family would not be here. So special place for talking about things like that, because yeah, I wouldn't be here if he had actually died there, which was, the odds were in leading that he should have not made it out. You know, most people didn't.
Yeah. Wow. And, you know, I think this is one of the few times the series has brought up the Holocaust. I don't recall another instance of Quantum Leap bringing up that time in history.
Yeah, and they brought it up so subtly.
Yes,
like we saw the
that was pretty
tattoo,
great. Yep.
and Sam's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, for upsetting you," and she's like, "Well, just what you said reminded me."
Right.
And they don't really ever say it.
Right.
Like they don't mention Dachau, I don't think.
Nope.
But I had read that that's what that tattoo specifically indicated versus the other concentration camps, and I don't know, maybe it was still too fresh in 1990.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a topic that current series would consider
bringing
ever
up.
touching.
Yeah, I mean, it's some pretty heavy,
very heavy
subject matter, but I mean, Ben can go anywhere in time now because he's on leash from the rules of this series.
I mean, we've addressed Nazis in the new series, so
and we did it in kind of a facile kind of way. Like, maybe we can go a little deeper than that.
Exactly.
It's potentially there. It could be a very dramatic, sad episode that they could do on it. So Al appears and Sam ends up asking him how long he's been there. And he tells him long enough to know that Sam is a mensch, which means good guy. Now, it's kind of funny because every once in a while I'll be going, you're a real mensch. And the reason I do that is because of this episode. Yeah. Because of Al's reference here.
This is where you grabbed onto that?
Yep. And yeah, like I just said, I use that word occasionally myself because of this episode. Mac comes down mad, and he knows that he told her not to buy. Why would she tell Mac this? Why would she sell him out like that?
I mean...
I guess she's an old lady.
You can't blame Mrs. Klingman, okay?
No, okay. But Mac doesn't know what's gotten into him, saying he's driving his customers away and upsetting his kids. Okay, he's being really unfair there.
Yeah.
It seems more like Sam was calming his kids down. And then a little later, Kimberly's going to get upset because of Sam. But that's not because of Sam, first of all. And this hasn't happened yet in this episode. So Mac's a little off base there.
Yeah. We get a little brother in this.
Yes, we do.
He calls him little brother, but not in a fond way.
No.
This is when he's yelling at him and being really kind of bad.
And once again, you can't really blame Mac because he's under a lot of pressure, like everybody else is in this situation. But at the same time, like I said, I think he's way off base in some of these comments. Sam tries to explain, but Mac says if he pulls another stunt like that, he's going to go back to Oklahoma. I'm assuming that's his home?
Well, Oklahoma is where he was going to school. He was going to Oklahoma State.
Well, I mean, can he go back there if he can't pay for the college?
I mean... who knows what his living situation was while he was in school.
So Sam, meanwhile, is trying to break Mac's lock when Bert comes in to explain that the world is going nuts and says he needs to buy a shelter. Despite Sam's best efforts to talk him out of it, Bert ends up buying the shelter anyway.
He hands him a check for $2,400, which was that 20% off price that he'd been offered. And I note the check was dated October 26th. That was yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So either we still have the timeline a little wonky here, or Bert made that decision actually yesterday.
Right.
after doing the tour.
But is only now giving him the check?
Right.
Maybe he wrote the check in case he wanted to do it.
Or maybe he just didn't know what day it was.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, it's possible. Max celebrates happily at Sam getting the check. Sam is significantly less pleased. But Mac is like, I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it.
And he calls him little brother again.
Right, yes,
this time happier. And he says that Sam, I was going to say the character's name. What is his name? Eddie.
Yep.
He says his brother Eddie just earned $120 commission, which works out to 5%. So that's what he's working for, 5% of sales.
He mentions if he keeps going like that, he could also pay for grad school. I mean, I guess at this point in time,
I'm
college was a lot cheaper.
I'm not sure how much money he needs to make, but I mean, $120 is pretty good earnings considering he's done zero actual work. I
mean, in 1962, I'm sure $100 was a lot of money. Nowadays, that wouldn't even buy you anything.
Yeah, and I'm curious, out of this $2,400, how much of it is actually profit for the business?
Right.
Because you actually have to build the shelter, pay for all of these furnishings and supplies that you're decking it out with.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I'm wondering how profitable this actually is.
How much is he getting that he's giving, $120 to his brother for making the sale?
Yeah. Sam, meanwhile, swipes Mac's keys as they enter the house, and the kids are watching Bert the Turtle.
Yeah, they're watching Duck and Cover.
Yep. And ducking and covering. Sam goes into the shelter and steals the bullets. He exits to find the kids and their mother And what? So I'm
So
really
he
confused.
he was
here.
trying to take the ammo
Yeah, I
and
get what
get
he's-
rid of
I
it.
get what he's
and he
doing,
pops his head out and he's like, "Oh, I can't take it right now because Kate and the kids were just outside of the hatch playing."
But how long did Sam take going to the shelter after grabbing the keys?
Because they were inside watching
Right,
TV.
they were watching TV and then suddenly they're all
Well, it's only a
outside.
9-minute video, duck and cover.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, all right. I'm just a little confused about the timeline.
you know, kids
So,
have short attention spans.
Yeah.
They've moved on.
fair enough. So yeah.
So he goes back inside.
He's acting like a sketch ball, by the way.
Yeah.
He's acting really suspicious. Yeah, he goes back into the shelter, puts the bullets in the toolbox.
I thought it was a first aid kit.
First aid kit? Okay.
That's what I have. Either way, he hit him in the shelter itself.
Right. So Sam goes back into the house, acting guilty.
Max looking for his keys.
Right. And Sam pretends to help find them when I think he places the keys somehow on the floor.
Yeah,
I don't recall
he
seeing
like
it.
drops them on the floor so that Mac can find them.
Yep. Mac finds them and then leaves.
And appears to not have any suspicion that,
Right.
you know, Sam had actually taken his keys.
Right. But he figures it out real quick later. But anyway, Stevie is trying to explain what Sam said to him last night,
Yeah, to Kimberly.
but has Sam explain. And she gets upset at Sam because she thinks that he is calling Mac a liar.
Yeah, that's all she got out of this whole
Right.
imagine the future discussion was,
Right.
you're calling my daddy a liar.
Right. So she goes to her mom, who gets upset with Sam, and eventually they end up going outside, and Sam ends up comforting her.
Yeah, so she's working on a fairy princess costume for Kimberly for Halloween. Remember, we're October 27th right now, so Halloween's just a few days away, and she's all upset, like, I'm making this, and I don't even know if my daughter's going to get a chance to wear it.
Right.
Because, you know, we might not have Halloween.
Right.
Because the world might end right now.
Right.
And you know what's funny about this is I could have swore going into this that we see Kimberly wearing this costume, running around in her fairy princess costume, and that never happened.
No?
I could have swore, like, I, in my head, see this little girl running around in her fairy costume, holding the wand, the whole bit.
It must be because she painted the picture for you and you just kind of put it in your
I don't know. I picture it. But, you know, also, she reminds me so much, this little girl with her pigtails, she reminds me so much of both, what is it? The youngest girl in the Brady Bunch, Cindy, because she always had her hair in pigtails like that, as well as the little girl from, oh my goodness, I'm not going to grab the name of the show. The one with, where she had the doll named Buffy.
Oh, okay.
Like, it was a 70s show, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
I don't I never really watched that show, but just peripherally knowing what that character looked like she's that quintessential little girl, little blonde with pigtails, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe there's some footage out there of one of those girls in a pink costume that I'm mixing it up with.
It's possible.
I don't know, but I could have swore that Kimberly was wearing this outfit like during this episode, and she never did.
Huh. All right. So Sam is burying the bullets. And I think this is an extraordinarily bad idea.
Yeah, so he retrieved them from where he hid them, and he's burying them in the backyard. Al sneaks up on him. He gets upset with that.
And
we
you know what's
get
funny?
foreshadowing right here.
You know what's funny? I have it exactly in my notes. Al sneaks up on Sam, saying it exactly the way you just said it. So anyway, you were saying?
We get foreshadowing here of exactly how this is going to go down, because during this conversation, we hear the dog, Sam, barking in the background. Like, Sam, you couldn't have found a better place to put these than burying them in the yard.
Like, especially, I mean, you could have, gone to, like,
How
a
about you
sewer
go
and drop
in
them
the
down
house,
there. Yeah, flush
put
them
them,
down.
like, in your clothes. Nobody's going to go in there.
Right.
Like, put them in your personal things.
Right.
Because the whole thing's supposed to happen while you're in the shelter. It's not going to happen, like, I get taking them out of the shelter, but the backyard, really?
Yeah.
Just leave them in the dirt?
It's
horrible idea.
It's not a smart move from Sam. Sam complains about duck and cover, and Al explains that kids need something to do to feel less afraid. And Sam thinks, okay, well, I buried the bullets, so Bert's not going to get shot, so all is well, I'm going to leap out soon. Yep, not so much.
Yeah, he hasn't changed anything. Bert still gets shot. You know what I found really puzzling about this, because Sam's really like going off about how duck and cover is a waste of time. He thought the whole notion of the video is just giving kids a false sense of hope, right?
Well,
how is this really any different than him trying to calm the kids down?
Well, yeah, exactly.
And telling them not to be scared.
Right.
That's what this video is doing. It's trying to help kids not be scared. So I thought it was really ridiculous of him to have a problem with this video.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was thinking it would be formative, and that as adults, that he thought that they would be able to survive a nuclear, explosion by ducking and covering,
ducking
as an
under
adult.
a picnic basket, right?
But
I mean, the video wasn't aimed for adults,
right?
It was aimed for little children.
Well, I think he thinks that that's a lesson they're going to take into their adult life for some reason.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I wasn't around during duck and cover era, of course, but when I was a kid, I grew up in Washington State. And it was basically duck and cover is what we did.
Yeah,
we did earthquake drills.
Right.
I mean, they don't do those here on the East Coast.
I remember doing something similar about going under a desk for some strange reason, but nowadays you have active shooter drills.
Well,
so.
Adam told me he never did an earthquake drill. He doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I was under the impression they don't do them here on the East Coast at all. But when I was little, we did them more frequently than fire drills. We had earthquake drills.
Fire drills is probably what I'm thinking of.
Well, fire drills, you line up and you go outside.
Right, yeah, okay.
You don't go under your desk in a fire. That's a bad idea.
No?
You leave. But in an earthquake, what you do is you're supposed to go under your desk, under a table. You hold one hand to the leg of the structure you're under, and you take the other hand and you cover your head with it. You duck and cover.
Right.
They didn't call it duck and cover, but it was the same concept.
Right.
So duck and cover lived on beyond, the missile crisis. And it is, I'm sure it's still being used in some capacity in earthquake-prone states. But yeah, like you said, now there's active shooter drills, so.
Yeah. And that's really...
Whole different universe than what we grew up in.
Yep. Okay.
Anyway.
So, I have to find out where I'm back in my notes.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, okay. So Matt calls him from the inside the house, and he's obviously very mad. And Sam ends up going in there. He's mad that he upset his daughter by calling him a liar.
Yeah, this is the whole liar incident.
Yeah. So Sam's explanation doesn't seem to matter, as they soon discover the dog has the bullets that Sam was just
That didn't take long.
Nope.
So the dog is literally chewing on the shotgun shells, and
that's not a very good situation.
It could go boom.
Right. So a very tense scene ensues, and Sam manages to eventually get the bullets out of the dog's mouth by basically trading one toy for another.
Yeah, a rubber mouse he held up for the dog. After getting the kids out of the room. Got the kids out of the room first, and then went and got the shell away from the dog. And Sam the dog survives.
So I'm actually kind of curious. I don't really know. If the dog had bitten down hard enough, how much of a problem would it have been for the other people in the room?
I don't know.
The dog definitely
would be dead.
I
think the real risk would be if he had just one, the one he was chewing on, it probably, and I'm no expert, this is just what I'm thinking, probably would have killed the dog.
Right.
But the fact that the whole box was like right there in the vicinity, it could have caused some kind of chain reaction, I think. They might have all blown up.
I mean, I'm not doubting this is a serious situation. I'm just kind of curious how serious of a situation this is.
I don't know.
So Mac ends up putting two and two together and realizes that Sam stole his keys and buried the bullets, and then basically kicks Sam out of the house.
Yeah, he says, okay, bye.
So Sam narrates that the two of them argued for over an hour, and he wasn't getting anywhere with the argument, but he was staying with the family at the very least. We see them continue to argue.
Yeah, the kids are watching TV.
Yep.
Which is what they do a lot.
Right, yeah. Maybe this is not the best time to use your TV as a babysitter, given that we constantly are interrupted by bulletins about the war.
Right. And this huge flock of birds fly outside. And it's just like what Mac described earlier when he was talking about the Dust Bowl. He said they knew something was about to happen because this huge flock of birds came. So he's seeing this flock of birds, and to Mac, like, that's it. That's the trigger. He sees the birds and is like, oh, shit, it's happening.
Right. And then suddenly we have a special bulletin. We're getting words from the President Kennedy.
But this is a real bulletin.
Yep.
Except this is actually footage that aired on September 13th, prior to the start of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, okay.
So it's the wrong bulletin, but it is a real bulletin.
All right.
And what he says here is there's been a great deal of talk, and then the power goes out. And then, they don't get to hear the actual announcement.
And then the alarm sounds.
Yeah, the air raid sirens are going off.
This sends everyone into a panic. Mac is ushering everyone into the shelter, despite Sam arguing that they're going to be okay.
Yeah, Sam's like, it's just another drill. And, I don't know if that was the smartest course of action. Like, why are you trying to convince them it's okay? Just let them go do their thing.
Right.
Just let them go to the shelter. The bullets are not down there.
Yeah, Sam's strategy in this episode is not great. Burying the bullets and, actively trying to interfere with this situation. Just kind of wait and see how the situation plays out.
I think it would have been smarter for Sam to just let them go. And then, later when things start hitting the fan, like, go be with Bert.
Right.
Like, you're just sitting there yelling at everybody is not going to help.
Right. So they end up not being... Oh, yeah. So they don't know where the dog is, which upsets Stevie to no end. There's a lot of shouting, a lot of crying.
Yeah, because the dog has his own, gas mask and boat waiting for him down there. We saw that at the beginning of the episode.
Sam continues to argue with Mac, and they hear a knock at the top, which turns out to be Bert desperately trying to get in. Mac goes for his gun. Sam wrestles with Mac, and Stevie thinks there's a gunshot because the gun accidentally goes off. Thankfully, nobody was killed right then and there. Stevie thinks it's a gunshot from the Russians, so he climbs up the emergency exit that we saw earlier in the episode that was pointed out. Al appears in a panic to tell him it's a false alarm, the power's just out, and Sam continues to fight with Mac. Mac says he doesn't want to kill Bert, he just wants to scare him. Stevie climbs up and finds Bert begging to get in, but the lighting makes him look like a Russian troop.
Yeah, and I don't know if you actually said this part. I might have missed you saying it because I was lost in my notes a little bit. But Stevie has a pistol.
Right, okay.
So he knew where there was another gun hidden.
Right.
Not his toy gun that he's been carrying
all
episode, but a real pistol like hidden somewhere else in the shelter. And he takes it.
And apparently this one isn't locked up.
This one's not locked up, right. So either he's stole it from his dad a long time ago and hid it, or I don't know what the case is, but it was not locked up.
Right.
Stevie has access to this gun.
Al is trying to sell Sam that Bert got shot by a .38, not a shotgun.
Yeah, not the rifle. And shouldn't this information have come up earlier?
Perhaps.
Like when we were first talking about the shooting, should we not have gotten the details around the shooting?
Right.
Would that not have been helpful? This whole time he's trying to hide the shotgun shells.
Right.
Like those were never the problem.
They hear a gunshot and Al realizes it's Stevie. Sam grabs Mac's shotgun, hits him with it, and then cocks it, and then climbs up and tries to talk him out of shooting. What exactly is he doing with that shotgun? Because the way he's cocking that shotgun, it's looking like he's going to go out there to potentially shoot Stevie, which couldn't possibly be what he's actually trying to do.
Yeah.
Is he just emptying the gun?
I don't know. Maybe at that point he still didn't put it all together of exactly what does happen, and he just wanted to be prepared. Maybe there's another person out there that's a shooter that he needs to threaten away. I don't know.
Or he could just be emptying the gun to make sure it's no longer a threat.
Right.
I'm not totally sure what he's doing there.
And Al centers on Stevie during this, which is, again, something I miss so much, that centering.
Sam tries to convince Bert to put down the shovel because, basically Stevie is mistaking it for a gun, but he's basically paralyzed with fear. He's, in the situation that he's in, like thinking that they're all about to be bombed, and then he has a child pointing a gun at him who's shooting at him.
Right.
So he's just like completely paralyzed and useless at this point. Sam tries to convince... Oh, yeah, I already said that. So eventually, Sam tricks Stevie by saying, duck and cover.
Right, which is something the boy's been so conditioned to respond to because he's constantly watching this thing. As soon as Sam says, duck and cover, he complies, and Sam's able to get the gun away from him.
And the day is saved. See, duck and cover wasn't as useless as Sam
pointed it out. Right, it was very important here.
Right, yeah. So the next morning, the crisis is over. The Russian missiles are dismantled. Max says Sam was right about a lot of things. They get a cancellation from Bert and 4 others for the shelters.
Yeah, and I'll connect to the dots during this, by the way, that what must have happened in the original history is it was Stevie that shot Bert all along.
Yeah,
and Mac took the blame for it. Yeah, so everybody's lives have been saved here, not just Bert's.
Right. Mac wonders what he's going to do, and Sam suggests, hey, why not sell swimming pools using the crews that you already have? Sell fun instead of fear, which Al laughs at, but according to Al, they end up doing very well with that, and Mac says he'll think about it with a smile and shakes Sam's hand, and that is where Sam ends up leaping. And yeah, like I said, pretty good episode.
Yeah. So the last news broadcast that we saw when Kennedy's telling us the missiles are being dismantled in Cuba, this one didn't actually happen until November 2nd.
Oh, okay.
So we skipped like 5 or 6 days. That happened like after Halloween.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they played a little loose with the timeline of when they used these actual footages. Really what they did is they took the whole Cuban Missile Crisis, which took place over like 2 weeks, and they shortened it into the 2 days that Sam was on this leap. Right. Is what they did. But I still love that they used the original footage. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of grounded this in actual history a little bit.
It kind of puts you in the time and place.
Right.
Which, is not something that we've experienced. And Sam certainly hasn't. I would like to think that I would be a little bit less judgmental than Sam is in this episode for the most part.
Yeah. So here's what I think should have happened. Well, first of all, I think Max should have let Bert in. Okay. I think he should have, because there's plenty of room for him down there. He did pay you for a shelter. Yes. You have his money. So technically, he's bought the right to safety from you. Right. You should have let him in. Yeah. I can see if it was a bunch of neighbors out there was a ruckus starting, but it was just Bert. It was just your neighbor Bert who paid you to protect him. Right. Maybe there's not enough supplies to support another person. I mean, maybe not, but I feel like he should have let him in before, grabbing a gun. It wasn't a mob outside. It was one person. Right. Who you literally have this relationship with already. Right. Who paid you. Right. To protect him during this exact thing. So yeah, I feel like he should have let him in. All right. But also what I really think, and I kind of said this before, Sam should have immediately went outside. Right? When all this, instead of sitting here and arguing and fighting and trying to get the gun, and just go up with Bert. You're trying to protect Bert, right? You know you don't need to be down here. Right. You know that there's no reason you got to hide right now. Right. Yeah. So why don't you go upstairs? Yeah. And go take care of Bert. Be like, hey, I got another shelter. Let's go over here and walk him away from the situation. He could have just as easily used the excuse that he was going to go find Stevie's dog. Right. Because, he knows there's no real danger here. There's no real danger, right. And they were all upset about the dog. But, yeah, standing down here arguing is not helping the situation. Why don't you go to the person that you know is about to get killed and deal with it from that end? Right. That's what I think would have been better for him. I mean, it might have been less... It might have been less dramatic. As Windora and Reed Price recently said, and then there would be no drama. Yeah. In response to a couple of my questions about their characters' motives during that interview. But yeah. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed this episode. It was kind of really heavy, but also it was really fun at the same time. It just kind of hit everything. Yeah. And I like that it was based in history. I like where it was based. I think all of the actors did a really great job. It was a pretty powerful episode, I think. Absolutely. So next week we got the new series coming back. Yeah. I would like to do the finale of season 3 pretty soon. Sometime soonish. Yeah. Can't promise a specific date right now, but we're gonna get to it. I definitely want to get it in sooner than later. And we got lots of exciting things on the channel coming. Stacie. Oh. We are going to go see Scott Bakula in New York. Scott Bakula is performing in The Connector, and we're going to go see him on Saturday, February 3rd. Yeah, it's pretty... Which is soon. Yep. That's exciting. We're going to try and cover it in some fashion. Yeah, we're not going to do a scene-by-scene analysis. Yeah, it won't be a deep dive, because we obviously aren't going to be able to, watch it and take notes like we do a TV show. Right. But we will let you guys know all about our day in New York. Yeah. Which sounds so exciting. And anybody who's listening, if you're going to be at that particular show, the one that Scott is doing his little meet and greet with, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to meet up with you and say hello while we're there. Absolutely. All right. So do we have anything else to say about this episode? I think we covered it. Yeah. All right. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of the podcast? What'd you think of this episode? Stacie can be reached at. I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a way to support content creators such as ourselves. And you can do a membership. You can apply for a membership, or not apply, just subscribe for a membership, and 99 cents a month to help support the channel. And, of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.